Yeah, welcome back to another video on our channel. So in the context of SIGGRAPH 2020, I was asked by Esri to be part of their virtual booth and give a quick presentation. So what I'm doing here is pretty much just a re-recording of this, so we can also have a version for us for our YouTube channel, so you can also see it. So let's just dive into the presentation. And so the title is City Engine at Urban Studios, Production of Real-Time Optimized 3D Architecture. So I'm just going to go ahead and give the presentation as if you were in the standard or in the SIGGRAPH audience. So let's go ahead. Okay, quick note about myself, the presenter, in case you just don't know me yet. My name is Matthias Bühler. My background is actually in architecture originally, and I'm the founder and CTO of Urban Studios. So in the past, I've done some instruction or an instruction DVD for the Gnomon Workshop, so I'm a Gnomon Workshop instructor. I've been working in visual effects for some time, so namely at Scanline Visual Effects in Vancouver, where I was responsible for implementing a completely procedural workflow for creating cities, and that was based on City Engine. So altogether, I've been pretty much working in procedural architecture and procedural city modeling for about 10 years now. A little bit of my personal work. So the image that we are seeing here is a few years old, but it really shows is one of those projects which I made together with my friend that really shows my passion in photorealism and rendering of urban landscapes. Then another image here. This is actually quite a recent image from an online course which I took a couple of weeks back, and this is pretty much completely done in Houdini. And this image here is also some sort of a hobby project which I wanted to do for quite some time. So this is partly done in City Engine, obviously the whole, let's say the urban part, and then the rest, like the cliffs and the vegetation distribution and the stuff like that, that is done in Houdini. So I like to switch between the tools. And the story for this project is obviously a city suspended from mountains, and there's an upper class part of the city and the lower class or lower social level part of the city, which is more like slum-like. Yeah, so if you're interested to hear or develop this story further, the story is not written, so let me know, contact us. Cool, so quickly about the agenda. So we already did the intro and presenter, so we're going to dive into a quick overview over what Urban Studios is doing, and then how we are producing our content, and then some of the applications, quickly chatting about the applications of how the stuff that we are doing can be used. And at the end, there's not going to be a Q&A this time. So, Urban Studios was founded in 2017. We are, at the moment, we're 9 employees or 9 staff, and we are located very close to Zurich, Switzerland. And as I quickly mentioned before, we are an official Esri partner. Now, as I mentioned before, my passion so far has been photorealistic rendering, and for let's say, or a couple of years back, this was pretty much only possible using offline rendering. And now with the upcoming power of graphics cards and the modern, let's say, modern game engines, there is this very strong, let's say, shift where these technologies are actually starting to merge. So there is now the opportunity to do photorealistic productions also in real time. And so what we are seeing here in this quick video is in a collaboration together with Esri. Using the Unreal Engine, we visualized this urban dataset, this complex favela dataset, which I produced with my friend a couple of years back. But this really shows where the direction where we are going. Cool. So what do we do as a company? So the thing is, we are doing something unique. So we are pretty much uniquely focusing on 3D urban environments and 3D architecture. And so therefore, there are three main points. So we are combining the expertise in classic architecture, so that's my background and the background also of some of the staff, with the creation of high quality 3D buildings. And so we are, at the moment, we are producing custom and off-the-shelf buildings, which we are also selling on our shop. And then we are doing some consulting for different projects and services in general, but all in the realm of 3D urban environments. And the applications of where the content that we are producing can be used is obviously in real-time or in offline rendering contexts. So real-time, obviously games, VR, or we'll quickly talk about this later on, virtual production. And then for offline rendering, this is classic visual effects or film work, TV work, commercials, and so on and so on. Now, just showing some of the work where real-time technologies were involved, where we were working on. So in this image here is at the Architecture Biennale in Venice, in Italy, where we were able to help as a company or support the Ideal Spaces Working Group that was actually the main exhibitor here. And the context or the topic of this exhibition was ideal worlds, or let's say ideal cities. And we were able to provide a couple of stylized 3D cities for that exhibition. And it's pretty cool because this stuff was exhibited for about 6 months. So in the video here, we see some of these abstract visualizations of some of the worlds. So this is the 14th century Renaissance Sforzenda. It's a historic reconstruction of or it's kind of historic in the sense that it was never actually built, but it's one of those famous historic ideal cities. There were more worlds that we have built. So, for example, the Ibirapuera Park, which actually exists in Brazil. There was also a historic reconstruction of Tel Aviv in 1935 by the original plan of Patrick Geddes. But you find this stuff in some other documentations or online. Then one of the very cool projects that we were involved in some time ago was this production of over 500 3D buildings for the Swiss game Transport Fever 2. So that was quite a bestseller for quite or I think it still is, on Steam. So it's actually a Swiss game, a Swiss transport simulation game. And just going to show a couple of buildings here. So the buildings which we created were in 3 time eras. So one was modern, or let's say modern around 2020 buildings. Then there was a building set of around 1920 and an older one, a historic one of around the year 1850. So the buildings that we are seeing now here, these are the modern buildings, and I think in a couple of seconds we can also have a glimpse at some of the older buildings. So let's wait and see. Yes, these are the older buildings. You see the horses and carriages. And so, yeah, go ahead and check out the game. It's called Transport Fever 2. Cool. So production. how do we work at Urban Studios? So let's have a high-level overview. So the base or the core obviously is a large library. So we are, since quite some time, we are building up a library of elements or of assets and materials, and we are building up an entire modeling workflow with which we can create high quality architecture. And so that workflow is mainly based in City Engine and in Houdini. From that workflow, we are creating buildings which are pretty much agnostic of the target application where the buildings are used. And because the buildings are used, or actually are produced with multiple levels of detail, the buildings can be both used in real-time applications, but also for offline rendering. We will see a couple of images later on. And so at the moment we are wrapping up our Unreal importer. We already have finished our Unity importer. And on the offline side of things, we have pretty much finished our Redshift importer. And then depending on demand from clients or potential clients, obviously we can also go further and, or could go further and write, for example, an Arnold or V-Ray or Clarice or RenderMan importer for our agnostic building definition. So if you see something, or if you are using with a specific renderer and are interested in having those buildings or getting access to those buildings to test or whatever, let me know. We are interested about this feedback. So, mentioning the library before, so obviously a lot of the stuff which we needed to create at the beginning is lots of assets, and so at the moment we have been focusing on the Los Angeles style. So we have some fire risers, some solar panels, some doors, lots of different things. Or for example, this ramp for more industrial buildings, and all of those buildings actually have very consistent levels of detail, and three of those, three levels of detail. And then going into City Engine, this is how it looks pretty much as a preview. So this is where we are building up where we are, let's say, creating all of the detailed buildings and then from here we are crunching all of the data using Houdini. Let's have a look at one of the buildings, at the building's levels of detail. So in this relatively simple residential building, we have on one hand side, we have about 63,000 triangles, which is, let's say, quite detailed. But then the other levels of detail quite consistently go down in quality, down to 10 triangles, which is pretty much an imposter, and then 2 triangles, which is just a billboard, which in our implementations always rotates towards the camera, at least in the game engines. That's what you would want to have. So let's have another look at another building, another set of images or slides to show the levels of detail. So in this case here, for this commercial building, highest level of detail about 250,000 triangles. So let's switch down to the next one right now. So this level of detail here is just 114,000 triangles. So I'm gonna switch back and forth to try to find the difference. So it's pretty much less than half of the polygons. So we worked really hard on this consistency between the levels of detail. Then the third level of detail, this is a bigger step to the last one, just 8,000 triangles, and then 10 triangles, the imposter, and 2 triangles like we had before. Cool. So this is a screenshot made in Unity of one of the buildings. And then there's another screenshot here also made in Unity, so all real-time graphics, obviously. And now we're working on a new production with which has higher, I would say, higher quality forms of the buildings or building shells in general. Plus the newer buildings, which we're going to release very soon, they will also have emission for night shots. So that's gonna be really impactful. Cool. So the idea about the buildings that we are producing is that they have these 5, let's say, qualities. So first of all, they should be consistent or data-wise consistent and architectural-wise consistent, in the sense that wherever you have, for example, a roof surface where you could walk on, so that there's also actually a door leading to that roof surface. And in some procedural systems or in some, let's say, 3D buildings that you can sell, this is not always the case. So we're trying to be as consistent as feasibly or as possible. Then we have a full PBR material system or approach. So we have everything from roughness, metallicness, albedo, I mentioned emission, and so on and so on. And then the idea is to have the buildings optimized with multiple levels of detail. We've seen them before. Plus all of the buildings are per level of detail also draw call optimized. Then on top there's a simple collision mesh, which if you want to have something more precise, you can go in and switch if that is necessary. And we are very interested in actually delivering the buildings in the native file format already set up with the LOD system, so that the buildings are really kind of that you get the drag and drop experience. So that's, for example, the case already for the Unity and for Unreal. Cool. And then, because we're talking about City Engine, right? So what you can do once you have all of those buildings, what you could do, for example, is go ahead and just massively, or let's say, just use the buildings or a set of buildings and just create massive environments by, for example, scattering them all over the place. And for example, for film backdrops or for TV or for commercials or for advertisement or or for example in the context of autonomous driving and so on. There's so many different applications where you can just use these off-the-shelf buildings or the custom ones, the bespoke ones, and just use them all over the place. Cool. Then one of the next applications where I see there's a great potential coming up, or a great demand actually coming up now also during these COVID times, is virtual production. So there's a huge push towards that especially from the film industry. So what we see here is an image which kind of displays or shows or showcases how our buildings could be used. So imagine if you have a green screen setup somewhere on a green screen stage. You have your actors, and then you have some sort of camera rig with a virtual camera, whatever the system is that you are using. It would also work with a phone or with an iPad or something like that. And then, because you will need to have a virtual set, you need to have some realistic buildings that are also real-time optimized. And so that's exactly where we are going. So you can have a real-time game engine representation, but still use the highest level of detail of the same buildings, for example, for offline rendering. So you get the best of both of the worlds, because the buildings are optimized for both of the worlds. And so this image here, this image here is really just a straight rendering of the buildings that we have. This rendering was done with Redshift, so this is offline rendering. And this image here, the same principle, also offline rendering, actually using Mantra and Houdini. And this shot here is a visual effects shot which we have produced in collaboration with Equeta Arts. So thank you so much for this collaboration, Yvonne. And what we're seeing here is just one of the demonstrations of using some of our buildings, just collaging them together to have a photorealistic representation that you can directly use for your virtual film sets. In this case, just quickly to explain, there's some matte painting going on. So there's like a couple of additional dirt patches which were painted in post. And because we don't have all of the buildings yet on this planet, also the far background is done in matte painting, but we're working on more and more buildings that could be used for a full CG environment. And in the upcoming weeks and months, I'm pretty sure we will showcase some of those here on the channel. Yeah, so that was it for this presentation. As I mentioned, there's not going to be a Q&A, but if there are any questions or comments, obviously leave them down in the comment. Please also follow us on all of the other social media channels that we have. And if there are any questions regarding the presentation or otherwise, or if you would like to get in contact with Esri or with the City Engine developers or us, just let us know. You can also send, obviously, an email to info@vrbn.io. Thank you so much, and I hope you liked the presentation. Have a great day. Bye-bye.